Hi everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Planning Pulse. It's Sam here and I'm joined by Stacey. Hello Stacey.
Hello everyone.
So we're going to cover a few things with you today, and the first thing that we're going to jump straight into is just a bit of an update about what's been happening with the team.
Yeah.
We did a quite extensive bit of recruitment over Christmas and New Year.
We did, yeah, that's right.
Advertised a bunch of jobs across our area planning teams, our planning enforcement team, and just a bit of feedback, I suppose, really, to say that was a really great exercise. Been really positive in so much as we've been able to promote great talent within the team,
Yep.
As well as getting some new blood in
Yeah.
the team as well. So we've got new officers starting in our North team and in our planning enforcement team in a couple of weeks.
That's
actually.
right, yeah.
So we'll be looking forward to them joining, and all of you that submit planning applications getting used to their names.
New faces and new people, and bringing new skills, and hopefully potentially bringing new ideas to us, which we're always very welcome to.
Indeed, and that is not the end of that journey either, because of some of those internal promotions, and also because of other things that have happened. There's a few more job opportunities in the pipeline too.
And backfill those posts.
Indeed. So just flag from me, I suppose, to say look out for those on our website, and there'll be details in full, but they are posts for planning officers in our majors team and in our enforcement team. More details to follow.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. So
we should say, actually, sorry, just quickly cutting in, Sam.
That's right.
You can tell this isn't prepped. Nicola Waters and James Webster in the planning policy team will have a similar update in relation to their team and their side of the service, but that'll be a future episode.
Indeed. And then sticking with the team for a brief moment longer, just also wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate and celebrate achievements within the team itself, in so much as two officers who had been studying under the umbrella of the RTPI apprenticeship scheme.
Royal Town Planning Institute.
That's right. Going to Brighton University on day release to complete a master's degree in planning matters. Became qualified.
They did,
just before Christmas, and they'll be working on becoming chartered members of the RTPI. And I think it's just a really great example of something that is well known to everybody within Wealden and within our own team, but that is about developing and growing our own staff. And that's two classic examples of that. We've got 3 other officers at the moment who
on
are doing
journey.
the same course, and hopefully more to come in the future. We are a big team and we're always looking for new talent.
It is fantastic news, actually, and we often go on about this and kind of post about this, about growing our own and about teaching people on the job, and that's just it's sort of celebration of that and icing on the cake for them. They've worked really hard, and the next step is to become fully chartered members of the Royal Town Planning Institute, which would be fantastic.
So moving on then, as well as kind of topics that we've brought to you in the past, we're thinking that we will adapt the podcast. We say this, I think, every single time we've done it recently, into something that we do a bit more consistently, a bit more regularly. But in order to make sure we do that, it will be probably a bit like this as well, a bit more kind of conversational, a bit more of an update about kind of general things that have happened over the last couple of weeks in the team too. And with that in mind, just a little bit of a plug from us, because for those that aren't aware, we have a kind of public engagement forum, I suppose is the best way to describe it. Let's Talk Wealden is the main brand. It's an area of the Wealden website that you can go to kind of get updates and participate in matters that are affecting your community. But we have a dedicated planning hub on that section, and the main update, actually, because the planning hub's been around for a little while, and that's where you get these episodes, and it's also where you can find out about appeals and other bits and pieces, is that we've got a dedicated section on there now about trees and the tree work that we do.
Yeah, we've called it Let's Talk Trees, haven't we? There's a lot of information on there. It's been worked up by our colleagues Dave Machida and George Morris, the tree and arboricultural officers. And there's some information on there, and there's a really neat video around how we consider tree preservation orders and requests for tree preservation orders, and there's a detailed explanation of what we do and why, and that's definitely worth checking out. And there's a series of other mini videos and guides on there across planning topics that you will come up against more regularly. The other plug on the Let's Talk forum at the moment is we're running a survey. We're very interested in your views as to whether you think the Let's Talk hub and in fact the rest of our digital offer, because there's social media, there's other things that you will see, commentary on planning applications, other mini guides, digests of appeal decisions, all that sort of stuff. We're genuinely interested in your views on whether that is helpful and whether it adds value, because at the end of the day, if it doesn't, then we won't do it, because there's loads of other work to do, there's piles of it, and we do all of this because it's intended to be helpful. So please have a look at that survey. It's a handful of questions, it's not very long. It shouldn't take longer than 5 minutes. You can do it on a smartphone. You don't need an account. Just follow the link. We'll leave a link below. And yeah, very much appreciate it if you could take the time to fill in that survey.
Brilliant. It sounds like we couldn't have made it easier. So please do that. Yeah. Also, I'll give Stacey the opportunity to say anything else that you wanted to. Only just because whilst I was updating you all on our intentions for the podcast, he did a little wry smile, like there was something else that you wanted to mention.
No, it was the survey.
There we go. Just in case it was anything else.
This is your attempt at Josh Rogan is failing. You're not as slick.
Okay, so that's a little bit about what's going on in the team, and then also just a reminder about our planning hub. We were also going to update you about some of our ongoing appeal work. So we just got a few cases that we were just going to give you updates about. First one was land at Old Orchard in Horham. So that was a housing development application that's been approved, but subject to conditions like they always are. One condition in particular relating to foul drainage details, which has now ended up in an appeal process as it relates to the details of foul drainage that need to be submitted to the council, whether they're considered to be adequate and whether or not they sufficiently deal with issues like off-site foul drainage capacity. And what residents and those that otherwise would be interested know as an issue that's affecting lots of people up and down the country with things like storm overflows and problems at wastewater treatment works. I suppose the update really is just to let everybody know that there's been a hearing session held about that. So a hearing is a public meeting held by the Planning Inspectorate. We facilitate that, and it's an opportunity for a planning inspector to ask questions of the appellants and also the local authority, as well as residents and other interested parties being able to put their voice across as well.
Which we live web stream that, didn't we?
We
so
live
we
web
can
stream
include the link to that, and actually we know that from looking at the data that the views of that planning hearing are really very high, which is good. There's a lot of interest because it's right to say, isn't it, that it's a test case in relation to the way that we are here at Wealden judging and measuring those what are called Grampian planning conditions on drainage matters, and we haven't had the decision yet.
No, the hearing has now adjourned. Just to make it clear to anybody that did see that, because it was kept open by the inspector on the day itself. One, because we carried out a site visit, but also two, there was a couple of outstanding matters that he wanted to be addressed. Those things have been finished now, so it closed a couple of weeks ago. And
there's additional documents, isn't there? There's the closing submissions, there's a costs application from the appellants.
That's right. There was some commentary around the potential use of a legal agreement. But that's all been done, and so now
we wait the decision.
So
we won't get into the predictions of whether you think we're going to win or not. Don't say it.
No,
I'm terrible at these. I always say I think we're going to win, and then we don't, and vice versa.
And maybe not the ins and outs of the details either, because really, like we just said, it was a live webcast. The recording there is there for anybody who wants to go and see it, and all the information about the case is available.
It's available online,
on the case file, and you get a good gist of what the issue is about by reading both the appellant's and our statement of case.
We've had loads of contact, actually. Sorry, final word on it. Well, until we get the decision, but lots of other colleagues in other planning departments up and down the country have reached out to say, what are you doing? You know, how come you're doing this? And what's it all about? And can you share your information? So, you know, we say test case, it definitely is test case locally, but actually, you know, there will be ripples in the pond, so to speak, if we win. So fingers crossed, and we'll see.
So, moving on, another appeal that we wanted to update you about was one in Buxted. I think we refer to it as land on the A272.
North of the A272.
Yeah. Again, another housing development, one that was initially recommended for approval by officers, but when it went to planning committee, members saw differently in relation to the balance of harm to heritage assets versus the benefits of the scheme, and actually recommended it for refusal because of that harm to those heritage assets. I mean, the main update for us is that appeal has progressed insofar as we this week submitted our statement of case.
Yep.
So it's just to draw your attention to the fact that it's now available online. So if you want to go and hear what we're saying about our issues with the proposal and how we're attempting to defend that decision, then please do visit the online case file and have a read of our take on it.
Yeah. The other one we were going to talk about is another high-profile case, and there's sort of a lot of interest in this site, and it's a sort of boomerang site in that it's come back again. It's land at Birdin South, which is actually in Framfield Parish, but it's on the edge of Uckfield at the top of Birdin Hill. And I won't go on too much about it other than to draw listeners' attention to the outcome of a CMC, so a casework management conference, and the planning inspectorate hold these ahead of major public inquiries or major appeals. So it's not where any evidence is heard. It's all housekeeping, isn't it? And it's about kind of exploratory meeting by the inspector as to how the actual planning appeal will play out. And at that CMC, I suppose the headline comment is that the appellant's developer asked for an adjournment in order that they could make adjustments to the case. Now, we were unhappy with this, and the long story short is that we felt that really the appeal should be decided on the matters which are subject to the planning application. And this is sort of quite a controversial point. The planning inspectorate's procedural guidance is really quite clear. It actually says that the appeal process should not be used to develop further development proposal, but nonetheless developers often seek amendments and will argue that they're not material amendments or they're insignificant amendments, and it's a source of quite a bit of frustration, to be honest. And here the developers were successful in arguing that they ought to be given more time to work up the scheme. And it's a bit nuanced, this, because the scheme is the subject of a non-determination appeal, but it's also non-determination ahead of us actually validating the planning application. That's a bit complicated in itself and a separate topic, but it's an issue to do with a declining to determine that second planning application, which we actually were timed out of doing, and the developer submitted an appeal before we were able to issue a decline to determine. Anyway, the point is that the CMC notes are available on the Major Planning Appeal Inquiry website. There's a specific section for the current Birdin South appeal, and it's worth listeners having a look at that, because there's a new timetable for the submission of information, and in fact there's a deadline looming tomorrow where we have to set out our position in relation to landscape impact and ecology, all arising from the amended access details. I'm not going to say any more at this stage because that deadline hasn't yet come, but watch the website, and we'll leave a link below to the specific page in the planning appeal library. Is it library? Do we call it library? Yeah, because all the core documents are on there as well.
Indeed. And just in case I missed it, we are now working towards a date for that inquiry, which is in July.
Yeah, it's the middle of July. My memory's rubbish on dates. Why do I think the 14th? I don't know. Well, we'll leave a link below
there we go.
with the actual dates.
Check the show notes. They're all there. All the information's there. Okay, moving on to current applications then. So ones that aren't yet decided. Which did you want to start with first?
Well, we've had a handful of sort of flurry, really, of major applications that have come in, and there are several. And actually, we may as well plug it, because although there's quite a few followers of the X channel, also formerly known as Twitter, it's good to plug that, because we do actually publish new applications in addition to the weekly list. New and controversial applications are often given a particular spotlight. So if you're not a follower of the X channel, then do pop a follow, even if you only do so for, say, a few weeks. And if you're not interested, then you'll unfollow. But it really is worth following if you are interested in planning matters within the district. So in no particular order, and I'll be reasonably quick, we've got a new application for up to 32 homes on land sort of between Hellingly and Magham Down. This is land north of Amberstone. I'm going to say sort of somewhat unexpected, somewhat unusual. I think with where we are, with no local plan and a falling land supply position because of the new MPPF.
Yeah.
Listeners, you'll recall from the last podcast that we explained the implications of the new standard method, and our supply has plummeted because the requirement has gone up. A bit more to it, but yeah, we're seeing, if you like, speculative applications come in, and this is yet another. So we'll leave a link below to that application for 32 homes. Fewer units, it's 10 applications, but we've got a major planning application at Highfields Farm, which is on New Road in Rotherfield in the north of the district. Sort of backland site setback. There's a farm there and some barns and stores, and the scheme shows demolition of those existing structures. There's a full planning application. It's not outlined, so all the details are there. And then we've got quite a few of these sort of solar or battery energy storage schemes.
Yeah, we've had quite a few over the last couple of years.
Yeah, there's a live application in Ninfield, but the consultation's closed on that particular scheme. But we've got another one where the consultation is still running. Oh, sorry, I should say, and there's one in Lawton as well, but the consultation on that is closed. But we've got a scheme close to Crooksted in Halland, or land sort of northwest of Sandhill Lane. And this is open for comments until the 12th of March, so there still is time to comment on that. And it's a battery energy storage scheme for up to 600 megawatts of stored energy offline from the grid, but with the ability to connect into the grid to feed back in that stored energy in times of peak demand. It's worth looking at the supporting statements of these planning applications as to the reasoning for them, and in short, it's all about decarbonisation of the grid, which in principle is, I think, a good thing,
and also very much supported by the national policy.
That's right, but without, and just generally speaking, not focusing on any particular site, I think it's fair to say that these things are large.
Yep.
And the land take is quite extensive. We'd be fibbers if we tried to sit here and say that wasn't the case. So do have a look at that, and if you are going to submit comments, then please do so by the relevant date. And then we should just mention finally, and I think probably relatively briefly, but the North Polegate commercial applications, which have been in for a little while.
Yeah, of which we've got two. So we've got the main one that covers the kind of employment distribution centre type use that's proposed, and then a separate standalone application for the provision of a roundabout on the A22.
Yeah.
And like you said, they've been with us for a little while. Yeah. There's been ongoing discussions about certain parts of information being deficient or needing to be amended. not least because of discussions that were going on with National Highways and also the local highway authority. And that's led to this point now where we have additional information submitted for both applications, which formally is an update to the environmental statement that's submitted with the planning application, because as part of their submission we agreed with the developer that they were environmental impact assessment developments and therefore required an environmental statement. But more specifically than that, the information includes new drainage and flooding information, new information on highway and transport matters, new information on landscape visual impact, and some new information on protected species as well. So if it isn't already, that information will be live soon on those cases, and we will also be starting the formal reconsultation on both of those proposals as required by the environmental impact assessment regulations.
And that's an important point, isn't it? Because they're all, for all intents and purposes, they are revisions and amendments to the environmental statement, and the regulations prescribe the consultation process. It's very prescriptive, and it's 30 days. Which sometimes we forget, and you can. It's a banana skin job, but look out for that, and the associated revisions, and I expect that will come to a planning committee in the not too distant future. Just while we're talking about that, and if we've got time, I wondered if it was worth just mentioning this issue, which has cropped up quite a few times now, and it's because we're talking about environmental impact cases. It's the matter of screening and the screening process for EIA development. And actually it can appear sort of quite a controversial matter. By and large, most applications which are submitted for a screening opinion are often determined to not be EIA development. And this causes quite a lot of angst. And in fact, we've got a case at the moment, most recent screening opinion, or one of the most recent, for a couple of sites which are towards the north of the district, quite close to the boundary with Tunbridge Wells. And we have issued a screening opinion that says that a proposed housing, predominantly housing development, some recreation and sporting facilities, would not be EIA development. And it's caused quite a lot, it's caused a stir basically, that or really it's a sort of misinformation that people feel that this is a sort of an easy path towards the grant of a planning permission. That's and right, that somehow we're allowing developers to get away with it. My words, nobody's actually said that. But should we explain, would it be helpful to listeners to just explain the process? Because it's quite a complex topic, isn't it? But primarily the screening process is to look at the effects of development, and it's only EIA development if it's a significant environmental impact.
That's right.
And that's the point to stress. And there are indicative thresholds within the regulations that government set out, and I won't go through all of them, but just to give you a bit of a flavour, we must look at the number of dwellings in a residential project, and it's over 1,000 dwellings or 10,000 square metres of a mixed use. And you must look at the size of the development as well. So, for example, 5 hectares, they're adjusted within a protected landscape, so an AONB or the High Weald, but it gives you a flavour of the scale and the complexity that, in government's mind at least, would be breached before there is a requirement for a formal environmental impact assessment. So not to be confused with, well, we're just going to grant planning permission, or, well, we're not interested in the associated effects from the development.
No, it's just one piece of the puzzle. The fact that something is screened out, so therefore isn't considered to be environmental impact assessment, doesn't mean it will have any less scrutiny necessarily by the time a planning application is submitted. Those planning applications for non-EIA development are still required to be accompanied by all the things that you would hope to see: transport assessments, ecological appraisals, issues around kind of drainage and flooding. And
Still all assessed.
They're still all assessed, and they're still only recommended for approval where the developments either comply with the development plan or that there are good reasons why the development should be approved where it doesn't. So EIA has its purpose. It is about, proper scrutiny of very large development and its environmental effects, and that's environmental in a very broad sense, because it's not just traditionally the natural environment. It's about impacts on communities, impacts on infrastructure, and all that kind of stuff too. But just because as a local authority we've decided that something isn't EIA, having regard to that stuff that Stacey mentioned, isn't the end of the story, and isn't a kind of free pass or an easy ride as we've assumed sometimes it can come across.
I wonder if it'd be helpful actually to do a bit more on that. Not another podcast, but listeners will be familiar, I'm sure, with our mini spotlight on videos, and I wonder if it might be helpful to put something together, so we'll ponder that. Perhaps let us know in the comments below if you think that would be helpful and you would like to know more. Then there you are, it's a shout out for potential future topics.
And a good thing to think of on the fly, really, because you're right, we do get lots of interest when we get screened opinions submitted, and it can make people worried about development in their area and what's going on.
Yeah.
So very lastly then, I was just to mention that it's not all planning applications and appeals. We're involved with other bits and pieces too. So I was just going to let listeners know that we've applied for something called a Digital Planning Improvement Fund, just by way of an example of something that, we're also trying to make sure that we adapt to and make better, and that's access to our information. So this was a fund that was set up by the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, and it's to help local authorities improve their digital information, and we've put a bid forward that's to help us with our GIS and how some of that information is accessible by the public, accessed by the public, because things like Article 4 directions, tree preservation order details, we'll admit they're not the easiest things to find. And
they're there, but they're
and others do that better than us. There's some things that we are okay with on our website, but there's certainly things that we know that we can provide to you in a kind of better and easier way. But it costs
a lot of money,
and hopefully applying for a fund like this will help with the resources needed to do that. So that's it from me. Anything else from you, Stacey?
No, I don't think so.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers. Thanks all.